Good afternoon, everyone. Hi. I'm Candy, just like Andrea said, and this is my colleague Toyin, and we'll be presenting on the Resilient Neighbourhoods project. And just as an outline of our presentation, we'll share with you the project overview, problem statement, the theoretical framework, the methodology, finding analysis, findings based on best practices, and finally share recommended policies. But before we get kick-started, I would like to thank some of the people who contributed towards the successfulness of this project. Our one and only Amelia, the Vancouverite, who knows all the corners of Vancouver. We'd also like to thank our client, in particular Katia, who connected us with all the relevant stakeholders from the City of Vancouver. And lastly, we'd like to thank our project mentors for all the guidance throughout this project. Now in 2017, the municipal government of Vancouver announced its participation in the 100 Resilient Cities project in partnership with the Rockefeller Foundation. As a component of the citywide resiliency strategy, the municipal government of Vancouver has engaged our team to provide assistance in developing innovative policy options. Just to share an overview of our project, our deliverable, which is highlighted at the top in yellow, will be creative policy options that the city can work with. And the main guiding question is, how might we leverage Vancouver's key assets to optimize connections, engagement, and a sense of belonging through creative and integrative social policies? And to do this, we identified three key assets that Vancouver has, which are highlighted in light blue, which are cultural diversity, public and shared spaces, and the vibrant arts community that Vancouver has. And we were just wondering, given how rich Vancouver is in terms of these three key assets, then why does this not translate into a deep sense of belonging and connectedness? Which then takes us to the connectedness and engagement surveys that were conducted by the Vancouver Foundation in 2012 and 2017, where they established that one of the key issues that people in Vancouver are faced with is social isolation, shrinking community participation, and weak neighborhood connections. Now, as part of our theoretical framework, we have this pyramid-looking, pyramid-like structure, and at the bottom we have social connectedness, social infrastructure, and social engagement. These are some of the key indicators that guide the concept of neighborhood resilience. And at the very top, we have the desired outcome, which is neighborhood resilience. This is to show that these are some of the components that contribute towards building resilient neighborhoods. And this is to just say that other than the three indicators that we highlighted in the pyramid, we also have other indicators like collective identity, knowledge exchange, and diversity within the communities. And our methodological approach, for a methodological approach, we used the ask, try, do approach, wherein at the initial stage, we looked at all the literature that we could lay our hands on, had semi-interviews with professors from academia, and also did some field work. This was to mainly collect as much data as we can that would then lead us towards the try section, where then we are able to refine the data that we collected so that we can move forward in defining the values, common values, and come up with ideas that will be feasible and implementable for the city. And of course, as part of our field work, some of the guiding questions we used in developing our question and gathering data on the field. Of course, we're interested in knowing if individuals have, how often have individuals changed neighbors? Do they know who their neighbors are? If they were to walk on the streets and came across that neighbor, would they even recognize them? So those were some of the things that we looked at. And of course, in doing our data collection and our field work, we're also interested in establishing the connections within the neighborhoods that we were interested in, which were down there, Collingwood, Renfrew, and downtown. We're interested in seeing the connections between individuals within the neighborhoods, and also the connections among individuals across the different neighborhoods. And as part of our finding analysis, on the top right, we have the largest box, which in a way gives us the impression that different age groups seem to be drawn to different public spaces, and this will tie in with our policy recommendation, which you'll shortly hear about from my colleague Toyin. And also the next the slide shows that the largest section on my top right hand, which is the community center. This is the preferred place where people from the age group of 34 to 41 prefer being at. Now, given this kind of data, we are able to look back and say, okay, do we then say to the city, since we have more people interested in using community centers, should we have more community centers to kind of further nurture that, or do we rather focus on other different types of public spaces? And also, given that we see a large number of age group individuals from 34 to 41, what does that say about the groups from 26 to 33, the younger groups, or even the 65 plus age group? Should we then have policies that will be accommodating in those community centers? I'll now hand over to my colleague, Tony.
Thank you. I'll be discussing the first, the best practices and also the policy recommendations based on the literature we studied and also based on our findings from interviews conducted. First, the best practice is actually surveyed is the time banking initiative. The time banking initiative is actually a program community development tool. It kind of fosters collaborative resource sharing. It's been practiced in Wellington. It's been practiced even in Quebec, in Canada here, and some other places in Europe as well. So the way it works is actually it's fostered with reciprocity and mutual trust between neighbors and among people. Like I said, the essence of it just to enhance the real wealth and value of individuals and community as a whole. It also fosters it's a way to embrace diversity, and also it fosters a circular economy. It's based on a co-production pathway of building resilience. The way it works actually is that when a person offers a service to another, of course, the person earns a time credit, and they can actually use that time credit to access services from other people. And of course, the time each person offers is valued equally. Like the time 1 hour offered in sitting with someone's kid is valued equally as 1 hour offered in running grocery errand for another person. So regardless of the kind of services that people actually engage with, assist one another with, the time, 1 hour given, or depending on the number of hours given, is actually valued differently, equally. So as you can see, it's actually a way to, it's based on the co-production approach of to engage the neighborhoods. And like I said, it fosters mutual trust. It's a way to actually enhance the wealth of individuals and community. Then this leads us to the policy recommendation. The first we are recommending is the co-production of neighborhood resilience. First, the policy recommendation here actually is based on the fact that neighborhoods should be engaged the neighborhood should be engaged, the members of the community should be engaged, should participate. It's a collective governance kind of thing, a participatory approach to solving issues within the community. Other than the city or the municipal government being the one actually doing the consultation or offering the advice or the way to go in resolving issues, the community can actually be engaged productively. And like I said, consultation is not co-production. Like consulting the neighborhood organization or the people about what you want to offer them, or about whether your policies are okay with them. That is not co-production. Co-production is actually about building from the scratch with the people. It's about co-designing, co-commissioning, co-delivering, and co-assessing the policies and the programs with the people. This kind of actually strengthens individuals' commitments to fostering, to providing solutions within the community, and also it helps with the neighborhood resilience as well. The second policy we recommend is the asset-based community development. This actually was something we actually got from the Tamarack Institute, and we kind of had aligned it with the finding from our survey. From our survey, we did we put together what people said about what they expect from the municipal government. We asked people, what do you think? What is your expectation from the municipal government? What do you think is the priority of the government? And as you can see in the word cloud, you can see some of the highlighted ones, like the various answers that we got from the people. So most of them are actually needs-driven, like the government should resolve this, the government should solve this, the government should be responsible for this. And these are issues within communities that, from best practices around the world, communities have come together to actually resolve issues around how public spaces are designed and used, about even the homelessness within the community. There are a number of issues within the world that communities have come together to resolve using their own resources. So the asset-based community development methodology basically is about discovering the strengths of the people, discovering what can the people offer. It critically boils down to three questions, like what can neighborhoods achieve with their own assets? And the second one is what can neighborhoods achieve when they receive a form of assistance, like an external support. And the third one is what can neighborhood not achieve with their own assets. Actually putting a kind of definition to each of these three questions actually delineates what are the strengths of communities, what are the strengths of the people. Then the city government can know, the municipal government can know where to come in to kind of bolster their resources. And with the fact that we actually live in a time when the government is actually facing shrinking resources and all of that, it's actually an opportunity for the government to also leverage their own, to increase their own leverage and their impact as well. The second is city intergenerational resilience. The top policy recommended. Well, this actually is based on the fact that there is need for us to actually engage the younger people in the concept of social resilience. And the idea, for instance, in Vancouver is to engage, for instance, the Vancouver School Board, and we can engage some schools where there are kids between 8 to 10 years of age. And these kids can actually be asked questions, probably to take home and maybe ask their parents, the seniors in their homes about what do they know about their neighborhood, what can they say about the demographics, within, of the kind of, what do they know about their neighbors, what's the demographics within their neighborhood, and just a few questions, for the kids around neighborhood, social resilience. And it's actually a way for them to learn from the older people, and also for them also to also pass it on as well. So that's the idea of city intergenerational resilience. Then the fourth policy recommendation is reimagining public spaces. Well, this actually boils down to the tactical urbanism concept. Tactical urbanism is actually an approach to neighborhood building, and it kind of is a way to actually adopt small-scale, low-cost, and scalable interventions and policies to actually drive long-term change within communities. It's about, for instance, how the ecology of public spaces, how are they used, or how are they designed, how are public spaces designed to actually facilitate connection, between people. The idea of tactical urbanism, like I said, is about deploying small-scale interventions within the community. Basically, it's just about what can the people do with their little resources, in their little capacities, and with that, they can actually use it to drive large-scale interventions. Still on public space programming, on tactical urbanism, it boils down to the question of how are public spaces designed to bridge connections between different demographics, between people, between maybe the seniors, between the younger people, between immigrants. How are they designed to kind of connect people even to the public spaces themselves? Because sometimes public spaces are actually constructed and people don't actually use them. For some of the interviews that we actually had, we actually realized that we spoke with a resource person actually at the neighborhood center. The guy told us that people actually come here, but a few people do. That some people actually they are not yet acquainted with using these resources. So how can we actually design these public spaces in such a way that the people actually use them? And when they start using it, they don't stop. They actually start. We make them stay. Then also, it boils down to the nature of activities. Like for instance, for senior, what kind of activities are designed, for instance, in the neighborhood centers to kind of engage different demographics of people. So, going back to the question, our project challenge, what do city policies around neighborhood resilience look like? So, from a policy perspective, we've identified the policy content, the content of the policy, which includes the core production pathway of social resilience, which is a citizen-led approach. In the sense that neighborhoods actually put down their resources to bringing solutions to issues within the community. Then the asset-based methodology, as I discussed. So all these are what should be the content of the neighborhood resilience policy. Then back to the various actors involved, like whose interests, whose ideas, who are the people that actually hold the reins of power, who are the decision makers. So we've identified the community members, the neighborhood organizations, of course the city planners also, they can also feature also as a form of enabling the neighborhoods. Then city staff as well. Then the policy process can actually incorporate a mix of bottom-up and top-down policy approaches. And policy context in the neighborhood resilience. In conclusion, I'll conclude with a quote from the book, Jane Jacobs' book, The book is Inspiring Healthy and Thriving Cities and Neighborhoods. And it says that cities have the capacity, the capability of providing something for everyone, only because and when they are created by everyone. So this actually, goes back to the full production practice of building neighborhood resilience. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for your presentation today. I was wondering if, I was just curious to hear more about what you might have found in terms of responses from people in the 4 different areas that you collected data from, because they're sort of very different areas across Vancouver, and so I was wondering if there was a lot of differences that you saw in terms of responses, or were there some similarities that you were able to pick out as well?
Thank you for your question. I'll start off with the differences, some of the major differences that we picked. So there was a section in our questionnaire where we asked the respondents to share with us what they know the City of Vancouver to be responsible for, and number 2, also what the City of Vancouver should prioritize as like a key focus area. And it was really interesting. We noted variation from downtown east side, Grandview to Dunbar. There was a lot of variation. Talking about what the respondents felt the city of Vancouver should prioritize on. In downtown east side, the immediate response that we got was the city should be, this is the list thing we are worried about, social connectedness in downtown east side. The city should be tackling the homelessness, the housing issue. It should be tackling the drug issue. It should be tackling the high death rate from overdoses that they're exposed to in the downtown. And then when you move to Collingwood, the Collingwood neighborhood, the people were more like the priority that people felt the City of Vancouver should prioritize was the managing and maintaining of the parks around, and making sure that they're cleaned, getting rid of the used needles. So we did notice that variation from one neighborhood to the other. And of course, that speaks to the specific policies that the city would have to present before each neighborhood. One size fits all wouldn't work in this case.
Another thing we also observed was the fact that, like, when we asked them that which area, which public spaces like do you avoid, and what are the reasons why you avoid them, we noticed that many of them actually like put downtown east side, even people from other neighborhoods put downtown east side, and a number of reasons they preferred were safety reasons, like especially maybe at night. So I just feel like I could feel that disconnection, like between the different neighborhoods. Yeah.
Just to maybe add on that a little bit, most of the respondents from the downtown east side, on the question where we asked which neighborhoods or which areas do you avoid in the city, they said none. Most of them said none. They go almost everywhere, whenever. And then in the 3 other neighborhoods, the first response we got was, well, I avoid going down to the downtown east side area because of crime. It's unsanitary. All those different reasons. And this goes to show that I guess we can read through that and see that the respondents in downtown east side, they're more open to going whenever. Unlike some of the respondents in the other neighborhoods who already have pre-made assumptions or preconceived assumptions about different neighborhoods, and as a result, they avoid going to certain zones.
what did you notice, or could you explain the difference, if any, from the Vancouver Foundation's 2012 research that came out with this, shocking revelation that people were feeling disconnected, to the 2017? And so what, if anything, has changed, and how do you feel like your policy suggestions to the city could address those concerns?
It is interesting to first go through the 2012 survey and the survey report in the 2017 and realize that 5 years later, the 2017 report still indicates that nothing to very little change.
That is that a quarter of the people, so it's like maintaining the same figure, that a quarter of the people in Vancouver still have a sense of social isolation.
Yeah, and that people still struggle with making friends or being or getting into circles that they were initially not accustomed to, and also yeah. So basically, the 2017 report and 2012 report, 5 years later, there hasn't been any change. The issue on social isolation, shrinking resources to help neighborhood connectedness, those issues are still being faced. So the question would be, 5 years later, we haven't noticed any difference. What could be the issue? What is it that maybe the city and the different neighborhoods are doing that is not helping us achieve the intended objective? Or what is it that the city and the different neighborhoods are not doing to help get us where we want to?
So if you had to, if Katya said to you, well, what's the one kind of pilot that we could attempt out of your kind of list of recommendations, what would you advise her? What would you think? This has the best chance of moving the needle.
Well,
if I were her, I would ask you that.
Thank you for that.
Well, from the co-production perspective or approach to like solving this issue, I would recommend the 10 banking initiative. But it kind of actually like it rests on like what does each person has, like the value and the worth of each person, and it's a way of actually like solving issues within the community.
So in your report, are you going to explain exactly how social planning might do a pilot on that? Could be helpful.
Yeah, of course.
My question is, you've been speaking about these two main actors, the city as well as the neighbors, but my question relates to actors that are embedded with neighborhoods, because neighborhoods is just a big still concept. Like, have you found other, like, is it NGOs or co-ops or any other important actors within the neighbors that might give you hints of how to start with?
Thank you for your question. Taking one example, the downtown east side, we have a lot actually NGOs and organizations that provide shelter, that act as kitchen outlets, I guess, and also where NGOs where the community members of the downtown east side can just walk in on like a day during daytime to access resources and services. There are NGOs and organizations that provide safe site injection, safe injection sites, and also different organizations represented by people from different cultural backgrounds. So definitely when we tackle the downtown east side neighborhood, those will be some of the key organizations that the City of Vancouver has to work with. Those are the people who know the community members in that area. They know the prevailing issues. They know how to go about in implementing policies.
The way the time banking actually started, like for instance, in some other places where it's been implemented, just some group of individuals came together and they decided to offer assistance to one another. And of course, they raised what they call time banking champions, and who actually each of them went around to enroll people into the program. And that was how with time, of course, the scale of the program actually enlarged, and we went around, of course, the whole community, and it became actually a very big program. We are in the city of Wellington. So it's something that it has to start within the neighborhood by the neighborhood members themselves, and from there they can actually raise people who can sell the message. Of course, when the people actually began to see the benefit, because they can actually gain. You can offer. For instance, you offer to run my grocery for me, or another person offers to sit with my child or do another thing. So when they saw what each of them is gaining, the benefits of people, of course, embraced it. Yeah.
Last question.
So I really liked your emphasis on co-production, and appreciated the fact that you ended with a Jane Jacobs quote. Really made my day. But having said that, I just wonder whether what she was saying is how do you reflect on the applicability of that to today, in the sense that we now live in a neoliberal era, right? And co-production means that people have to commit time to this effort, right? They have to commit time both to thinking of ideas of how to do it, and then to actually engage in democratic processes that kind of decide which of those ideas get implemented. That's going to take a lot of time. And given the fact that today time is considered to be money, and so you should be thinking about making money in that time as opposed to spending it on the community, I wonder not whether that's applicable and what the challenge is, but also whether you see differences between these different neighborhoods. I can imagine that there's much more of a challenge in the Dunbar area than in East Side, downtown East Side. So anyway, your reflections.
Okay, just a moment, please.
Fine.
Okay, well, regarding the first question you asked about the challenges embedded in the co-production approach, well, I also from the literature we surveyed, of course, these were actually issues that came up, and these were issues that were also resolved using the neighborhood capacities. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so of course, there will be frictions, there will be some lapses in this kind of involvement, but definitely I believe they can be resolved using the resources within the people. Yeah, and probably, and if I thought the municipal government wants to come in, to be more of just enabling the people, the process, just fostering enabling policies rather than as opposed to providing the solution to the people. Well, you said in this time when everybody wants, why would they want to put their time down when they can use it to make money? Well, for instance, looking at the time banking exchange thing, they are not just putting their time, they're also getting something back in return. So even if you give 1 hour to come and sit with my child, you can actually get 1 hour to do just say 1 hour, can use something use it to do something of the greatest value to you, even though it's valued equally. So I think it just boils down to the fact that everybody gains in the process.
Just also to add on to that a little bit, it's inevitable. The neighborhood, the different neighborhoods, the individuals living in those areas, they have to invest time into nurturing those social relations amongst themselves. If that doesn't happen, then we'll never will still remain further off from achieving social connectedness, and the next Vancouver Foundation report might even come back the same. And also, we feel that with the time that people will be investing to kind of build the programs within the neighborhoods, it will be important that the city puts in place incentives. They don't have to be in monetary terms. And this is something that we will look into and incorporate in our report as well.
That's all the time we have for questions. Thank you.